Come on in. Good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. You can get something to eat and drink. Um, I think I know everyone here. I don't know if everyone knows me. I'm Tamara Schmaltz. I'm the administrator for Virology. And I just wanted to make a quick introduction to Keith. Most of you know him, but I think we always have a few new people. Keith's been with Virology since before some of us were born. Not me, but 1996. And he became the head of the division when Dr. Corey, who I saw, left to become the president of the Hutch. So he's been with us since 6 years as the division head. So we do this, try to do this annually at least, and just to let him tell us the state of virology. So here you go.
All right,
Keith.
Yeah, clap for Tamara. That's great. So help me remember, I'm supposed to stay right here in the middle so that I can be on this Skype thing for the later folks. Yeah, you can just remind me. So just to tell you a little bit about what I think we can do today, I have a few minutes of just comments and a few notes so that I can go over things, things that I thought people would be interested in hearing. And then we'll have some time for questions, whatever's up, or discussion, comments, whatever. So we have an hour in the room, and it can take an hour, or if we feel like we're done, that's fine as well. So it's interesting to hear Tamara, ask me how long I've been here since 1996. And one thing, especially for this group, because you've got so much to do during the days for patient care, we are having our infectious disease and virology symposium. I know some of you try to come over in the morning. And the reason I bring that up in the context of the time is that it's going to be up in the PacMed building, which is the big orange building, kind of just south of downtown by the freeway that you see. And I don't know how many old timers there are here, but I see Larry, old timer, and Mei Lee and Steve. So people who were actually in that building, right? So we had that building because virology was always looking for space. We didn't always have this lovely space here. And so Larry got us that space in the top floor of that building, which was the old Public Health Services building. Pretty rough space, honestly, a lot of exposed piping and stuff before it was cool, and sort of asbestos hanging down and things. But it was great because we had space, and that's where I got started, actually, my first laboratory work with Larry and other folks. And we were only there a couple years. We got booted out by a little startup that we hadn't heard of at the time called Amazon. This is true, who rented the building, rented the entire building, and we were told they were going to be a big deal, and so they booted us out, and it turned out they were right. And they followed us back down here, which is great, so they love us. So anyway, that's going to be kind of fun. So the space is in that building, but now it's all been completely remodeled. I've seen the pictures, I haven't been in it, but it looks glorious. I think we might physically be in the exact same space where we used to work, so come to that, it'll be kind of fun, and we can reminisce. Okay, so thanks for those of you who kind of pestered Tamara for us to do this again. It's easy for all of us to get busy and just be in our regular routine. So thank you for doing this. So I want to spend a couple of minutes, as I mentioned, just sort of talking first of all about our mission, sort of where we are right now, and then our goals and plans for the future. So I don't know that we have an actual formal mission statement, which means that we've gotten a committee together and gone over this. You can spend hours doing this, and it might be a useful thing for us to do, exercise. But a first draft of just what I think about, over just a couple minutes is, our job here is to provide the highest quality of viral diagnosis for our patients, for those who are local in our hospital system, as well as those who we service throughout the country and really the world through our reference testing services. We want to be the highest quality we can. And second of all, our mission is really to move the field of virology forward so that we improve the care of patients who have viral infections. So not only now their diagnosis, but as a division, we also are very involved in the prevention and the interventions on viral diseases. So that's what we do. Okay, we're virologists broadly, and we try to do the best job in our daily work, and we try to make the future better. And so where we are right now, hi Anna, a couple of things you guys always need to remember, again, because the daily grind can get us down, but this organization, this group, has a tremendous reputation, and I have the privilege of getting to travel, honestly, all over the world and represent you, us, as a group. And everywhere I go, our reputation is just sterling. You know, a great, just recent example, it didn't even have travel. The CAP inspector came in and they called me in the morning and said, "CAP's here, the inspector wants to see you over at the university before we get started." So before he came over here, Stephen Piper just wanted to sit down. And, you know, he started on the regular stuff and, you know, oh, how do you do this? And said, oh, well, we have a test, but, you know, we use the whatever, and then, but then we go beyond that and we do the this, and we're actually developing that. And pretty soon, his jaw was just about dropping because of all the stuff that we do. We do an amazing job on the routine stuff, and we're one step beyond that, and we're looking at one step beyond that. And so that's fantastic. If you go, you know, if you go to the Clinical Virology Symposium, everybody knows the University of Washington, and everybody respects what you guys do. This is if you have to get a viral infection diagnosed, you want to have you guys do it, and you should hear that. And I'm sorry that I don't get to say that often enough. So, you know, high quality, the breadth of our menu I mentioned. You know, I just want to call sort of everybody out. You guys are incredibly skilled. You know, so our technical staff is really second to none. I want to call out the administrative folks. I hope you appreciate what a great administrative staff you have, that they're not trying to make your life difficult. They're not in the way. They're actually trying to make everything that we do better. Tamara makes my life better every day. I work most closely with her, but I know that Jennifer makes her life better, and, you know, Roxanne makes her life better. And so appreciate that. Tell them that there's probably Administrator Day every year, and I miss it every year. So today will be Administrator Day. And then, you know, you should know that your faculty care deeply about this program and are in it for the long haul. You know, you see like people sweep in like little consultants and they change everything around and they, you know, get their moment of glory and move on to something else. Look it up. I mean, you know, we've all been here forever, right? You know, I mean, Larry, myself. So we care deeply, and we intend to see this program succeed over many, many years. Okay, so I just want you to hear that straight from us. So where are we right now? We're incredibly strong and stable right now, and I mean that from a financial point of view. We're not rich, but we are stable, and we are in the black, and we're, you know, actually, many of the biggest threats that I've seen, knock on wood, are a little bit in the rearview mirror right now. New threats are coming up always, but we're in solid shape, and I want you to know that. So our funding internally is stable. You know, the hospitals pay us what the hospitals pay us. We can, you know, we can go into that. You know, it's kind of capitated and get a certain amount, and it never goes up. Generally doesn't go down either. If it tries to go down, we fuss a lot. We've been able to avoid that. But we are growing in our clinical services in terms of our outside business. Our outside demand for testing is growing about 10% annually for quite some time now. Some years it's 11 or 12, sometimes it's 8 or 9, but around 10% every year. And we've actually spent some time trying to figure out exactly why we're starting to see this substantial growth. You know, we've made a lot of efforts in outreach through conferences and talking to our local folks, and also the department's doing a great job just in pushing the Department of Laboratory Medicine forward. So that is a place where we can continue to grow, expand revenues, and expand what we do, and just expand our impact on patient care. So not just the people here, but people everywhere. Okay, let's see. Oh, and then the other place, you know, again, what we do for the University of Washington system is sort of set, probably not going to increase in terms of, you know, revenue, at least. Demands will increase, as I'm sure you guys feel. But what is growing even faster than the kind of outside clinical work is the outside sponsored work. So I think a lot of you know that, you know, May Lee's group and others do a lot of work. Anna, you're here. You help us generate a ton of that. This might be companies who are developing new diagnostics. Maybe they're developing a FDA-cleared assay for BK virus, or, you know, CMV's sort of been done, but these are done. And And we help them. We'll talk a little bit about why we do that, but we, we might work with them to do that. Other companies might be developing a vaccine, maybe a herpes vaccine or a new vaccine for rotavirus or whatever, and we'll help work with that. And then, as you know, we're doing more and more work in the viral cure efforts. That's a big mission of my own, and that's generating actually more and more work for the lab and Mei-Li's group, but also sometimes for everybody. And then the other thing I should mention, that just right now, and again, just so that you have a sense of where we should have some gratitude, we have a great relationship right now with the department as a whole. The leadership of the department is fantastic and incredibly supportive of us. Whenever I advocate for pretty much anything for you guys, for this lab, there's just a level of trust that's pretty unprecedented in a long time. And that's really making things a lot better. And it's enabled us to become successful, frankly, and financially stable, and all the goodness that we've promised for a long time we could do if we were allowed to do so. So, if you see the departmental leadership, tell them you heard this, because it's true. So challenges, I mentioned that the internal revenue doesn't really grow much. That's okay. We sort of know what to do. We'll expand our clientele beyond simply the University of Washington. A big challenge that we see, that we've known about for a long time, is this push toward point of care, commoditization of work. They take the stuff that we developed, that Mei-Li developed painstakingly over years, and now they put it in a box, right? And they sell it to every lab everywhere. That's a challenge. On the other hand, it's a really great thing, because a lot of times we develop tests and it's become available everywhere, and we've shown that it helps patient care, and now it's helping people that don't happen to live around Seattle. So that's great. But it does put a challenge on us that we need to be continually thinking about what's the next thing, right? How can we do things more effectively? What are the special values that we can add to things? And we've been doing that successfully for a long time, and I see that continuing. Another big challenge, and maybe we can talk about this more if you're interested in the kind of question discussion section, is the department is changing. I think everybody's heard this, that the Department of Laboratory Medicine and the Department of Pathology are going to merge into one department. So there is some unknown about that. We don't know about what the leadership will be. We don't necessarily know what the structure of that will be. So there is some unknown there. I think this process is going to work out well, and I think we're going to end up in a good place, but it is going to take some diligence on our part to make sure that happens, because the last thing we want to do is have some change that works to the detriment of a program like this. So I'll be very diligent about that, and we'll keep you informed as that moves forward. Okay, so what are our goals now for the future? In the near term, we continue to try to improve our testing. So can we improve our performance? Is it more sensitive, more accurate? All of that stuff. Can we do it faster? Faster is always better. The clinicians love that. Obviously within reason. And then can we do things more cost effectively? So that is the continual incremental improvement of what we do for a service point of view. We're working to, I couldn't think of a better term for this, kind of democratize testing. That is, testing that seems today that's unique, that only we can do. It's going to become available to everyone. Things move into the boxes and they move into other places, and that's good. That's we need to be improving the field for everyone. And so we'll support that. And yeah, sometimes you can worry you're working yourself out of business, but we're not. And we're innovators, and we're going to continue to do that. And we're making the field a better field for everyone. We continue to do research. I haven't talked about this a lot, but as you know, we have a close partnership with colleagues at Fred Hutch within infectious disease at the university. How do we use our testing better? The testing we have now, how do we understand how that's applied to patient care? It's very important in what we do. And we've been leaders in that through our collaborations. So we'll continue to do that. And then we'll continue to support research into vaccines, into therapeutics, into cures for viral infections. This is moving the broader field forward beyond just diagnostics. So just to wrap up my comments, looking forward now a little bit beyond just next year, I think clinical testing is going to continue to be the foundation, the basis for everything we do. This program is about taking care of patients. All the other stuff is just doing that maybe a little more broadly, a little bit more into the future. But that's where we've started and where we'll continue to be. We'll continue to have this competition from point of care testing, as I mentioned, and we'll continue to innovate to get around that. I do want to see us continue to focus on new technology, and we've done a great job at that. Alex has brought in a fantastic next generation sequencing capacity into this laboratory. We are, in just a couple of years, we've become, leaders in this in terms of whole genome sequencing. We're developing a metagenomics approach. There's all sorts of stuff we can do with that. So the future's bright and that sort of thing. And I really want to see us become even more closely aligned with interventions. So not only do we make the diagnosis, but then we are intricately involved with, the prevention, the treatment, the cure of these infections. So this program can really support all that. So I think the future's bright. I think it's, it's an incredibly exciting time to be in science and what we do, to be in patient care. Nobody's, previous generations couldn't even dream of the stuff we can do today. So you should come to work, feel great about what you do, and be excited every day. So with that, I'll stop my part of the comments and just open things up. It's not that big a group, so don't be shy. Ask whatever you want, and I'll try to answer as best I can. Uh, 20 minutes, good. All right. So we have 40 minutes for discussion. Doesn't have to be, but I'd love to hear what's on your mind so that we can answer it. All right, Steve, we'll start.
Just curiosity, when you're testing, external testing is growing by 10% a year, can you give us a breakdown of where that's coming from and how you guys are attracting that? Are you going out to meetings and advertising at booths and stuff like that?
So I've asked exactly those questions. In terms of where it's coming from, the best way to put this is the growth has been broad-based, which means we can't really tell. We can tell, it's just there's no one particular place where it's coming from. So a couple of things have happened. We go out to conferences, we do a booth, as some of you have participated in at the Clinical Virology Symposium. Clearly there's growth there that comes from that. People hear particularly about unique testing that we do, things like, some of the human herpes virus 6 stuff, for example, that you really can't get anywhere else. Sometimes, amazingly enough, that has generated clients for things that you kind of go, well, we're not the only place anymore that has that. Why is it coming here? But they've heard about us, or they trust us, or they like, I don't really know. So we have a lot of presence at Clinical Virology Symposium. We go to, for its IDSA meeting, we might go to ASM. We typically go to at least one other throughout the year. When asked, I will talk to potential clients through, often Marcelo Calentes in the department will have a lead, and he'll say, can you talk to so-and-so real quick, or can you sometimes just communicate with them, email, answer some questions. They like the responsiveness of that. They like to hear there's people who seem to know what they're doing, and we'll actually call them. I think that, we're not the cheapest provider for an outside client. Doing things in Seattle is expensive. To do things in the university system tends to be a little more expensive. So if you look at a big lab, ARUP or one of the, Quest, they can be cheaper. I think the working conditions are worse. I think the responsiveness of faculty to get to talk to a physician about a test is almost non-existent. But it's cheaper. But we're trying to add that value, right? Say, why do people like to buy iPhones? They're not the cheapest phone, but you have a feeling of quality. So that's what we're trying to go for. And then the department, Marcelo has done a great job, honestly, as a people person going out, just just going to potential clients and saying, here's what we have. And often it's not just for virology, right? I mean, they've gone out and just gotten new clients for the department as a whole, and then we're sort of along for the ride. So there's some combination of that, and it's really hard to tease that fully apart. But I think it's sort of all of those together.
Keith, I think part of that too, and not necessarily the clinical work, but for example, we have Greg and I just talked to a potential clinical trials client, and they Googled us. I mean, they basically said, well, we did all this PubMed search, and as far as herpes, they have a diagnostic for, they want to go to Walgreens with, that kind of, but as far as herpes work goes, she said on the phone, she said, yeah, you guys are like the global leaders. And I'm like, well, part of our faculty are here that brought us here, so just part of it is the reputation of what we do.
That's actually true a little bit beyond just the clinical testing and sort of everything that we do. It is one of the philosophies we've been implementing for the last several years, is that sort of just presence. That is, always, maybe if you've gone to some of these meetings, you'll hear me say, get the logo on there, like get us on there. Just University of Washington Virology, UW Virology, sort of over and over and over as a brand. And it actually pays off that we do a lot of things and they start to help each other in odd ways. So I work, in like the herpes cure work that I do, I work with this company who rationally designs enzymes that cleave DNA at really specific parts, right? So it's this pretty esoteric company that I've worked with for several years. And they called me a month or two ago and said, oh, Dr. Jerome, I work at this company, and I heard from my colleague over here, that we knew you. We're doing a study. We have a new drug for human herpes virus 6. Okay, HHV 6. We were working in simplex over here, and they said we have a just regular antiviral for HHV 6. So we got online. We started researching 6, and University of Washington kept coming up, and realized we knew you. And it's because we've published a ton of papers on chromosomally integrated HHV 6, on HHV 6 international standards. We own half of the HHV 6 sequence. I mean, we deposited half of the sequences in GenBank. It's like this huge presence in this thing. And so suddenly this company that I'm working with over here happens to just hear about us. And they said, well, would you be able to do 10,000 PCRs? Yes. You bet. Because then they have no idea the capacity that we have. So, that's going to be that's going to be a substantial contract that comes out of that. And so there's many examples of that. Of just presence and goodness that builds upon itself. What else? Now, I got to have one more thing. I'm not going to let you go until there's at least one more thing. Come on, somebody step up. You look like you're thinking about something, Jerry. Scratching your beard there.
Well, I guess thinking about the department merger.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unknowns, but how will that process work? I was reading the email from Mayor and
Charlie Albers, yeah.
So committees will be established to talk about what to do. Could you talk about that process a little bit, whatever you know?
Yeah, so that's in its very earliest stages of planning. So essentially, all the work up to this point has simply been, is this going to happen? And quite honestly, there were a fair number of people in the Department of Laboratory Medicine who didn't want it to happen among the faculty. I'll say I've personally been relatively agnostic about this. I'll just, I think there's wonderful possibilities going forward doing this. On the flip side, this is an incredibly healthy department. So, there is some risk going into this. I'm going to be honest about that. So we need to do a great job with it. It's going to happen. These committees are being built because both of the interim chairs are people of goodwill and want this to succeed, and you have to involve the people who make up the department to do this. Otherwise, it just won't succeed. You've got to have buy-in from the people who, have all contributed and created all of what we have. So, what are the big issues? Then you think about leadership, right? That's probably the biggest thing, and honestly, probably needs to happen fast, right? Because, without identifying who's going to lead this, we're just going to spin wheels, right? Until we know. So that's going to be a huge thing. So search committee, right, for a chair, for permanent chair. That's going to be a major and important thing. Structure of the department overall. We have to have a committee to think about this. So how do you take this thing that's going to be created and figure out what makes sense, right? So anatomic pathology in the past had anatomic pathology, which were all the people doing the clinical work. And then they had a bunch of people doing basic science, okay, a bunch of PhD researchers. And that department's always struggled a little bit because those are a little bit different worlds for them. For us, we're more used to that kind of being intertwined. Maybe you see that in me, you've seen that in Larry. We're thinking about clinical work all the time, but then we're also thinking about, what would be the research. They were a little bit more split. So how then does a new department go? Is it just, one half is what used to be AP and one half is what used to be laboratory medicine? And then they've got so then is it 3 with 2? So how do you work that out? Or, is it that anatomic pathology is one of the clinical services that we provide, like microbiology is, like virology is, like clinical chemistry is? Maybe that's a model. So that all needs to be worked out. That's not going to be hard. Faculty care, especially the younger folks, care a lot about appointments and promotions, right? Like there's this process, and you probably see this, but faculty spend a ton of time spinning wheels about like evaluating each other and criticizing each other and saying you're not very good at this. And, it's an odd business actually. So, but there needs to be a process for that, and people do worry about that honestly because how a faculty member who focuses mostly on clinical work is judged might be different from somebody over here who does basic science, and so how do you make sure that's fair to everybody? So there'll be committees on that. Most importantly, for us is there'll be a group just talking about how do we implement clinical care, right? So how do we bring in the anatomic pathology services? Part of what's been driving this is that they haven't necessarily been super efficient in the delivery of care. I'm going to be careful how I phrase this. And not necessarily super proactive in going out and expanding the services, like we've been talking about, like, oh, we're going to get this business and we're going to go out to these people and then we're growing 10% a year and all this stuff. It's kind of been like, oh, you're doing what we've always done. So how do you get this culture of growth, expansion, having a bigger impact and expecting to do so year after year after year? How do you get that into this newer group? So there's many groups and each one's going to have committee, and each one will have 6 or 8 or 10 people on it, and there'll be meetings, and a lot of time is going to go into this. It's going to be a substantial drag to some degree of other things we can be doing, but hopefully at the end we'll have access to samples that we didn't get access to before. We'll have more input into the university because people will pay attention because we have bigger departments. There are pluses to be had as well.
Is there the size of pathology versus lab medicine? I mean, can you put a percentage on it?
Yeah, maybe I can't get granular enough in percentages because I'll be off a little bit. Yeah, so if you look at like faculty members, pathology is substantially bigger. Okay, a lot more faculty than we do. So laboratory medicine is a very small department, actually. Okay, so that's uneven. If you look at the number of people in the department, everybody, we're way bigger, okay? Because we've built this huge thing, right? And, virology is sort of the flagship of this. We're the example that people try to follow, but other divisions have done this as well. They have outreach, and they have big staffs, and so, okay, we're the bigger department. That's great. If you look at revenues, we are it. We don't have so many grant-driven faculty in our department, but the ones we have are very productive and do very well at getting out external grants. But then the revenue that we bring in, clinically from the sponsored research and sponsored service, there's kind of no comparison. So, it's a union of peers, but peers in different ways.
I have more of a comment. You know, with my head on as a clinician in infectious diseases, there's no comparison in terms of the service that we get from laboratory medicine when we're in service versus what we get from pathology. So this is just to emphasize that the culture in the two, I know you didn't want to be very sort of maybe overt about it, but the culture is very different.
So you're saying that laboratory medicine generally provides service you're more pleased with?
We're incredibly responsive, not only in virology,
Yeah.
but you know, I have most experience with virology. We need something, we can talk to the tech, it gets done, we can talk to the faculty member. Pathology, things disappear, they're not even posted in the computer and things will be done for days. So it really impacts patient care.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly hoping that as the department merger goes on, the culture that's here is going to be adopted across both of the.
There's a lot of talk about culture in the process of the deliberations around merging. Yeah, and I think we want to keep the best parts. It's gonna be a challenge. You know, you worry. I mean, that's one of the risks, right? Is you regression to the mean is always a concern. Larry.
So insight to detection of viral agents and host markers are really sort of where the world is going. What are your thoughts about where that's going to go in this department going forward? I guess
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, it was hard to hear with this.
Oh yeah. So I can paraphrase and you can. So Larry's asking, pointing out that some of the most important emerging technologies now are in situ detection of virus, viral antigen. So if you're looking at a piece of tissue, you're looking within the setting where it exists, can you see the virus? Can you detect it? Can you tell what's going on? And then looking at markers of host response, maybe tissue-based, but also I would maybe expand. Some of them are not, the host response does not even necessarily always need to be measured in tissue. I mean, it can be, and it doesn't have to be. So kind of what do we think about that? So, and assuming that that continues to grow, where's it going to be? You know, is that, I think the crux of the question, is that an anatomic pathology thing? Do the pathologists get that? Do we get that? That's a great question that we're discussing. I've spent some time talking with Jeff Baird about, obviously my bias is we should be doing that stuff. You know, the flip side is, you know, we are not board certified anatomic pathologists. You know, I'm a trained anatomic pathologist actually, very out of practice. So there's technology that we can get, and there are models in which we can be involved in that. What we have traditionally done well, though, are approaches that scale. And I think that's really one of the huge advantages that we have over anatomic pathology. At the end of the day, right now, anatomic pathology requires a highly trained, expensive physician to sit in front of a piece of glass and look at it. And that's part of the reason why they can't grow like we've grown, right? I mean, you know, that at the end of the day, we develop things and demand grows, and you guys, you know, we get you the instruments you need to do more, or we get you more help, and things grow. So we need to balance these things out. You know, and longer term, AP's got its own set of issues because, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more artificial intelligence start to analyze a lot of these things. You're seeing more of that happening. It's not going to happen tomorrow. What does it show in 5 years, 10 years, 20? Yeah, it probably does happen. So, you know, that's the sort of stuff they need to worry about. And then you get to the point of, then it gets to, you know, what are the clever tests that clever folks can develop to look at things where they exist in tissue, right? You know, it'll again go back to the creation and the innovation of the test. So, you know, that's a very long-winded kind of way of saying we're looking at these things. We see some opportunities. we're trying to capture as much of it as we can for here and think about how we can sort of be, ensuring that the resources that flow from that come to us. Because we know how to apply these things, interpret them, and make patient care go better with them, and we care.
Also a lot of noise in the biomarkers right now. So I'd be curious if we go back to Larry and ask him what biomarkers are you interested in. Our fastest growing test right now is quantum furon. So
Well,
I agree with you. It's just figuring out the right, like what's the one that's gonna carry forward at scale.
well, I think you sometimes gotta take risks. Okay, when we started the quantum furon thing, it was out there with TV is because David wanted to do something and I needed to figure out a test to justify the fact that he needed 20% cell. So we came up with quantum furon, okay, and then, you can't predict the future. No one really predicted, that it would end up being a blood test. I certainly did, but we started it. Okay, I'll be the first person to sort of say that, sometimes you just sort of have reasons to do things and you left it alone for the first 10 years. And, now it's the entry criteria for, the world of TB vaccines. And it's going to be a boom industry. So I sort of view the same thing for in situ detection. You have all these companies sort of telling you and selling things, and they're going to have slides, and they're going to do RNA transcripts, and we ourselves are research labs are doing a very good job. So latency transcripts versus transcription transcripts versus making gamma interferon pathways to actually show that the cells are that there's host response genes in response to the game transcript, that you can actually define what is in situ going on with a latent or persistent viral infection. I think the only people who really will develop this and develop this on the host side and the virus side are going to be virologists. That's the way the field is going. Defining HHV6 in the lung, is not good enough to say that it's the pathogenesis. So you actually got to get tissue and you got to do things. And so a lot of things we are doing in the latent persistent area where there's controversy and decision making and S's and O's, we need to get down to the next level to actually do that. So I do think this is a field that that you want to capture. I don't know directly where this will go. It is certainly, when industry is spending so much energy on this, both on an antigen detection point of view and an in situ point of view, we've got to reflect on that and sort of say, well, this is sort of the way the world is going to go. It's like sequencing. When there's a new machine costing $1 million being generated every 3 or 4 years to improve the technology, that is telling you that there's a whole bunch of people who are investing in sort of using this technology in a way that our job in viral disease, I think, is to figure out how to use that technology ourselves.
One nice thing about the new generation of instrumentation as well is really improved. You know this from your research lab, but just maybe for everyone, it's really improved the reproducibility of tissue-based detection. It's always been historically sort of a, you get a tissues, then you're putting it in different, vats for a certain amount of time, and there's lot to lot variability. But this has really been instrumentalized now, so the reproducibility is much better. Some of them cost $1 million. They don't all cost $1 million, which is good. But especially when you think about doing a clinical test where there's quality control, it really needs to really behave the same way every day. The field's really there. So, Larry's completely right. This is the sort of thing that can be implemented. Right now it's in the research arena, but that's where everything starts. And that's the steps we need to go through. Anything else? Okay. Okay, last call. Otherwise, this will just become a party for the rest of the time we have the room. All right, thanks everybody for your attention. I'll be around for you.